Hey everyone, this is Andy, better known as Love Retro BTW on Twitter, X, Threads, IG, and Cafe BTW on TikTok and YouTube. A quick update that the Cafe BTW podcast is taking a very long hiatus, but I still have something really amazing to share with you. We have a fantastic retro gaming community on Twitter X where we've crossed well over 2,000 passionate members. And if you're a lover of retro gaming, this is the perfect place to share your content, showcase your pickups, or just chat about your favorite old school games. To dive into nostalgia and become a part of the thriving community, click in the show notes on the Cafe BTW link tree or go right to my Twitter X profile on Love Retro BTW. And now, without further ado, gear up for another sensational episode of the Gamers Week podcast.
This time on Gamers Week podcast. This also kind of has the same vibe to it as like, don't lick your Switch cartridges.
Right, yes. So naturally, everybody's going to do it.
Right, of course.
If you weren't inhaling or huffing your Steam Deck, you will be now.
If I had one, I would totally, like, what's so great about this?
That's how you get hooked. It just takes one.
The first one's free.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing my Steam Deck.
Well played. Well played.
You know, I just want to say something here. You've changed the first sentence.
Are we doing this again?
You took out the comma.
Ryan took out the comma. Ryan did it.
It used to have a comma, and now it's not there. And now we're going to get so far into it that it's going to be like, well, the Mandela effect. You're going to say, Don, we've never had a comma. And I'm like, no, we've always had a comma, but you guys took it out. Like, no, we've never. You can go back and look. We've never had a comma. And maybe you guys are going to do some sort of weaving behind the scenes and like editing every single episode just to mind F me and make me think that there was never a comma there. And now somebody is adding in every welcome to Gamers Week
Trouble Bucket
podcast.
Time. There you go. There's all the commas.
You forgot one, the one that's shoved up your ass.
Oh, trust me, I didn't forget that.
Is it an Oxford comma?
Ooh, those are the best kind.
What other kinds of commas are there? I stumped you. All right.
I know there's different types of colons.
Okay. There are 4 types of comma: the listing comma, the joining comma, the gapping comma, bracketing commas. I've always been a big fan of the gapping comma.
Are you sure it's not the gaping comma?
That's a huge comma.
Are you going to do it with all the commas?
Well, I'm not the one that's reading it, so.
I know, I'm asking Blue.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that. When you said do it with all the commas, I was still thinking about the one up your butt, and then I wasn't sure. All right. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 101, and today is Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. My name is Blue Williams, and I'll be your host for this evening. But of course, I am not alone. I do have my 2 fine co-hosts with me. My first co-host has been friend-zoned by his skeleton love interest, but is planning to change all of that by teaching everyone the true meaning of Christmas. And my second co-host is a kid at heart who loves setting burglar traps almost as much as he loves the 4 corners of a nice square cheese pizza. Please, everyone, say hello to Ryan Payne, aka Retro Game Brews, and the one and only Donnie G.
I have to say, I do kind of have a kinship with Sally a bit. I regularly use frog's breath when cooking at home.
And I am a fan of a good trap. Do you guys remember the game Mousetrap as a kid?
Of course.
Oh, yeah, the board game? That was awesome, at least the first 2 or 3 times, and then you started to lose the pieces and it no longer worked.
Right. That game slapped, and it always made me want to actually build a trap, but I've never done it. Like, I would love to build some sort of epic trap to maybe ensnare one of my children in the house, like a big old net that comes down, like they step on it, or they go to grab the last thing, the last sweet that's in a box in the pantry, because they always do this. They always leave the damn empty box in the pantry. So this time, when they go to take the last one, it sets off an elaborate trap, and it just like gives them, it's either like a light slap in the face with a fake hand and a fart spray that just goes like, no, don't do it.
I'm going to say avoid the fart spray, because the slap in the hand, they only experience. The fart spray, you're probably going to have to experience. So, when you're creating this Rube Goldberg machine, the hand's the way to go.
Yeah, you don't want that fart spray getting in the food.
Well said. I'll omit that part.
All right. Well, on the note of fart spray, let's go ahead and get the show started with our reviews, reactions, and requests. At Team Rail says, a massive congratulations goes out to Gamers Week for hitting their 100th, aka 69 plus 31 episode.
There wasn't enough pause between 69 and 31, so could you do that again for me?
69 plus 31.
Perfect.
Happy now?
Thank you, Team Rails.
Thank you.
At Rambowski says, congrats on hitting such a milestone. Awesome show, great formula, and fantastic chemistry. Cheers to 100 more episodes and beyond.
Aw, thank you, Rambowski.
Here.
And RGC Podcast says, pretty sure Gamers Week wins the award for fastest podcast coverage of the Game Awards. I may or may not have been up till 2 a.m. that night.
Oh,
that's not important.
Ooh. And now it's time for the Hey, Dad, how you doing? All right, now give your mother a kiss or I'll kick you in the teeth. Okay, well, what are you reading? The weekly podcast poll. Dad, are we really going to discuss conspiracy theories again? Well, it's a well-known fact, Sonny Jim. There's a secret society of the 5 funniest podcasters in the world, known as the Poll Tavern, who run everything in the world, including the Gamers Week very important poll, and meet annually at a secret expo in Oregon known as PRGE. All right, Dad, who's in the Poll Tavern? The Queen, the Vatican, the Blue, the Daddy G's, and RGB right before he went tits up. Oh, I hated the RGB with his massive feet and that smug look on his face. Oh, you're gonna answer me, Paul. Oh. Dad, how can you hate the RGB? Because he puts an addictive chemical in his poles and make you crave them weekly. Smart ass. Are you drunk again? Let's get pissed. Sounds like you're already there. If you really want me and you think I'm sexy, all you gotta do is vote. You know, when I come over, you could at least put some pants on. Head, pants, no. Really need some help, Dad. Oh, I see how it is. You probably voted for other. You think you're so smart. I'm not kidding. Your head is like Sputnik, spherical but quite pointy at parts. I hope you cry yourself to sleep on your huge pillow. Aw, come on, Dad.
Pillow.
I'm not kidding. It's like an orange on a toothpick. It's a virtual planetoid. Has its own weather system. On that note, I think I'm going to head out. All right, fine. You've stayed your hour. If you really want me, just reach out and touch me. All you gotta do is vote. Pipe it down.
Well done. You gotta give that guy a complex.
I don't think I'm qualified to judge your Scottish accent, but it sounded pretty good to me.
I appreciate that. That was probably the worst, but I appreciate at least the sentiment.
One of my favorite movies. That was great.
So I Married an Axe Murderer, fantastic movie.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
All right, every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP or very important poll. If you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Question this week is, with the 20th anniversary of Rockstar happening over the weekend, we want to know, which is your favorite Rockstar franchise? Coming in third was Max Payne, 17.8% of the vote. Coming in second was Red Dead with 30.4% of the vote. And taking it this week is Grand Theft Auto with 42.2% of the vote. However, 9.6% of you said other. So let's look at some of the comments from the poll. At the LP Princess said LA Noire, we really need a second one. At ZBR_Pro XP said franchise, I don't know, but the Warriors is the game. Come out and play. At MSN Game Master said, I also have to throw in Bully, which is an absolute classic of a game from Rockstar. At Frunk is Baldwin said, I've spent over 1,000 hours playing through the various GTA games, but still love their sense of humor and music channels. My favorite being Chinatown Wars and Vice City. At Lehyro said, just checking the comments to see how many people bring up Bully and Manhunt.
Actually, I think Lehyro was the only one to bring up Manhunt, so there's that.
Yay?
All right, Donnie, so what did you choose this week?
Grand Theft Auto it hit differently. It was a completely different game from when it first appeared on the PlayStation to when it showed up on the PS2 in Grand Theft Auto 3. It completely changed the game on how we do first-person adventures. Mm-hmm. And like Frunkus Baldwin said, the sense of humor, the music channels, I could get lost driving in the cities alone, just listening to the music, and not have to do any of the missions. That, to me, was fun. So my pick here is Grand Theft Auto.
Excellent choice. Blue, what about you?
I hate to agree with Donnie 2 weeks in a row.
Why do you hate to agree with me?
But yeah, I think this is an easy choice because Grand Theft Auto 3 essentially changed the game for open world action adventure games. The first two were kind of the top down thing. Yeah, whatever. Feels a little arcadey. But then Grand Theft Auto 3 did the third person like open sandbox experience, and it just kind of changed the world as far as its tone and its content and the level of violence and how shocking it was, plus the music. Had never been anything like it before, and it took the world by storm. And I remember, I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but working at a local news station, and in between the news cut-ins, we would play Grand Theft Auto 3 on the Xbox that we had there in the studio. Nice. And it was so much fun. So even though I haven't really kept up with the franchise, it still holds a special place in my heart.
Very nice.
In between breaks, would you try to get like a 5-star wanted level and then hand the controller over to somebody else and say, all right, you deal with this?
Got it. Your turn. So what about you, Ryan?
So I've never played Red Dead, but I want to. I've heard it's very good. I've never played Bully. I've never played Manhunt. And I refuse to play Max Payne. Because my last name happens to be Payne, and everyone out there goes, oh, you must be Max Payne. You're related to Max? It's the same joke as like, oh, you must be a real pain in the ass, which my usual response to that is, oh my God, that's the first time anyone has ever said that to me. You are so smart. Did you come up with that all by yourself? Good for you. So
you going to be okay, bud?
I have a grudge. Against Max Payne. So that is I refuse to play it. I refuse to watch the movie. Max Payne is dead to me.
You mean it's brought so much pain to your life?
There it is. Did you come up with that on your own?
I sure did.
So naturally, I have to choose Grand Theft Auto. I love that game. The first one I ever played was 3. I actually have never played 1 or 2. So my introduction to the series was 3. And it was one of those games that I swear if it had been created and was available in the early 1990s, it would have been lumped in with Night Trap and a bunch of other games that were a problem in front of the U.S. Senate hearings that were going on because
100%
the violence, there's sex in it, there's so many opportunities. You're stealing, you're doing a lot of crime. There's drugs involved. It's a lot. And the games themselves, though, because it was a open world kind of sandbox style game, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted. Yes, there were certain parts of the story you had to advance in order to move forward. But at that point, there were so many side missions, or like Donnie said, just get 5 stars and see how long you can survive. I mean, that was probably the main thing that we did as friends when you would go over someone's house. It's like, all right, you're going to get 5 stars and we'll see how long you can last. And super fun. You'd steal a tank, you'd steal helicopters and stuff when the military would start going after you. So much fun. And
going to the military base was almost like instant death.
Oh yeah, for sure. But then he would like take the drug in order to slow down the bullets and stuff.
Where can I get that drug?
Right. So, Grand Theft Auto, definitely. I have not played the more recent titles for it. I've heard that the online is just an absolute cesspool, and the game is pretty much broken with all the mods that are you're able to create. So I've heard there's a mod in which your gun shoots tanks. So,
What?
Yeah, not exactly newbie friendly to say the least, but Grand Theft Auto is certainly back in the day from the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox has a soft spot in my heart for sure.
All right, let's move on to our patron shoutouts.
We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. The Real Retro Game Brews, Fruitcake's Pickled Pepper, Ducks with Thick Thighs, Wizard of Zardoz, Bobson Dugnut, Loudmoth, Retro Blast Pat, Great Siaman 81, B&T's Illigai, The Mad Milkman, Johnny Boombots, Seven Castle Forest, Crunchy Kong, Sheriff Snacks, Frank Grande, Love Retro BTW, Steven Sand, Ramboski, Terry Canair, Dungy Forever, Ducks in Disguise, Don't Make Me Pull Over This Car, Games with Coffee, Hybrid Divide, Matto1606, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, the Redhawks PDX family, including Shannon and Luke, Shalazeel, Zach Huge Thanks, Number One Blue Sick Voice Fan, Sassy Sony, Evo Lust, Rai Secret Best Friend, Mega Retro Man, Gamatroid, Michael LeKite, Emo Esque, and Bill Tucker. If you like what you hear today, and we really hope you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing like prizes and giveaways. You'll also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
And I heard you giggling at my pickled pepper, and I'm starting to get a complex.
Come on now. We all know it's not the first time.
It's a good size.
All right, let's move on to our headlines. And our headline segment is, of course, proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic, family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they're playing through Chrono Trigger and Dr. Mario 64. Visit them at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes.
Oh my God, I cannot believe they are playing the game Dr. Mario 64. It's so good.
You know, I have never played Dr. Mario 64.
As like a Dr. Mario expert, don't you kind of owe it to yourself to play Mario 64?
Do I, though? Because it's already perfect on the NES, and the 64, we all know how we all feel about the 64.
But it has such a great controller for puzzle-like games. You know?
I can't imagine trying to start on like level 20 and here's this thing. Good luck.
Yeah, let me just whip out my third hand so I can play this controller properly.
All right, first up from PC Gamer, just 4 days after the day before's disaster launch, the studio has abruptly closed. Just 4 days after the ugly launch of a not quite a survival MMO the day before, on Steam, developer Fntastic says it's closing its doors because the game flopped. A few hours after the studio announced its closure, sales of Day Before on Steam were halted. The Day Before has failed financially, and we lack the funds to continue. Studio said in a statement posted on Twitter. Fntastic said in the closure message that it has taken no money from the public during the development of the Day Before, adding that there were no crowdfunding or pre-order campaigns prior to release. In a later tweet, the studio said that it has not received any income from Steam sales yet and won't in the future, and that it's working with Valve to offer refunds regardless of playtime. This was our first big experience, Fntastic said in a post on X. Shit happens. After an extended period of hype, controversy, and deep skepticism surrounding the Day Before, that saw it temporarily removed from Steam over a trademark dispute, it finally launched on Steam on December 7th and immediately ran into trouble. Server issues were widespread, but players were also surprised to discover that it wasn't quite the zombie-infested survival MMO they were expecting. Instead, it bore a number of characteristics of an extraction shooter similar to Escape from Tarkov, except not very good. The reaction was immediate and intense. The Steam ratings crashed to mostly negative on the official day before Discord was temporarily locked down as moderators struggled to keep a lid on the upset. There was a presumption that patches would be forthcoming to smooth out at least some of the roughest bits, but that once again apparently now off the table. Predictably, users on the day before server are once again enthusiastically venting their frustrations, accusing Fntastic of perpetuating a scam right from the start, and this time there's no mod team to put a stop to it. Even for a game that followed a path as convoluted as that taken by the day before, this is a bizarre and entirely unexpected outcome. Fntastic said the day before servers will continue to operate, so for now at least it will remain playable, but what happens next is anyone's guess. A game that didn't live up to the hype? Who knew?
I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of sad to see an independent studio go down in flames like this. But on the other hand, like having entirely zero emotional investment in this, it's kind of been like a case of get your popcorn, because this week has had some really interesting stuff come up on Twitter.
Right.
You released a game and your plan was to quote unquote patch it? That is a horrible way to do things for a game studio. Was it just bad direction? This doesn't make sense.
You know, it's interesting because there's been a lot of games that have recently come out that have gone down in flames day one. The difference between this game and those games is that those games, more than likely, were created by a much larger studio that had a butt ton of money. They could throw at a problem and fix it. This studio did not have that. So with that in mind, knowing that your entire financial situation is going to be revolving around the fact that this game is coming out and needs to do well, you would expect them to have a more buttoned up quality assurance process. It sounds to me like they did a really good job marketing it by building up some hype that this is going to be epic. That's probably where the downfall is for this game. But my hope is that they believed in the project and it just so happened to not be in line with what people actually wanted based off of the marketing. But I don't know. But again, to Blue's point too, you hate to see an independent studio go down in flames. But you know, if they're not going to make the best of it, then you know this is what they get.
Okay, it's no big deal.
Okay. It's no big deal.
No big deal. It's fine. So I'm browsing Steam and looking at some of the reviews. So here's one person's take on it. The game was in development for 5 years. It's not open world. It's a small city and you can't enter 90% of the buildings.
Oh, Jesus.
It's not MMO. Total players I saw combined at Safe Zone and outside, maybe close to 10 to 15. The jump button is useless. There's a zombie maybe every 3 streets.
Zombie survival game. Well, you know.
Yeah. And the eating, drinking, healing animations are delayed about 5 seconds.
Which in a survival game could be a problem.
Could be a problem. Somebody else has said the best part of this game was the refund button.
Oh, snap.
That's not good.
But yeah, but I mean, I think you have a lot of point in that there's a complete disconnect between the marketing side of the developers who are just doing their job without really, I guess, checking in on the other ones, or perhaps leadership is telling the marketing team to do their job and the development side will catch up. But I do think this is a smaller and perhaps more severe case of stuff that happens like with Cyberpunk, where, you know, we've marketed the absolute living hell out of this thing and it reaches a point where you just have to get it out and we'll fix it later. We'll fix it later. It'll be fine. We'll fix it later. And you come to find out it's not fine. It's not even a little bit fine. But I think that this game, I mean, at one point it was the most wished for game on Steam.
Right.
To fall this far, that's pretty, it's been an interesting show.
I mean, if you can't go into 90% of the buildings, that's not open world.
No.
That to me sounds like your, you know, usual game of like Halo or something, right? Where it's just corridors and alleys and that kind of stuff, which, you know, that can be a fun game. But the promise was that this would be open world, MMO. If that's not it, then don't include that in your marketing.
See, Slithers on Steam has said, this was the greatest fail in the history of gaming, and I'm glad I got a front row seat to the disaster. I laughed from the moment the game started to the moment I got a refund.
Ooh.
And
At least somebody was entertained.
yeah, and he did recommend the game. So Flight 93 said, the day before, the day after, but also the day after, but before. Thanks for the refund. This was hot trash.
I do love the wordplay.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear the developer's point of view, like a biopic or something like that. The making of the day before.
That would be a really cool like Netflix special.
Yes. I would love to hear the insight as to how this game progressed through development with it being with it having all of these problems and what their pressure situation was like. And maybe this is now an eye-opener to all of those development studios and all the higher-ups, all the people of the boards that don't have to do with game development. You have to let people complete the game. Doesn't matter how long it takes, let them complete the game so that whenever it comes out, it's done, it's complete. We don't have to sit there and wait for patches and bug fixes and yada, yada, yada. We can just enjoy the game.
It's like, it reminds me of Kingpin, where Roy Munson, his name now becomes a term in bowling.
Munson.
Right? Got Munson. Right? It's going to be the same with this. It's like, oh, well, we don't want to pull a day before.
Yep, absolutely. You still owe me 2 months rent. All right, next up from Variety, Twitch now allows artistic depictions of nudity in update to sexual content policy. Twitch, the Amazon-owned live streaming platform popular among gamers, announced changes to its policies under which certain types of sexual content that were prohibited will now be allowed if appropriately labeled. Under the new rules, artistic depictions, meaning they are drawn, animated, or sculpted, are now okay if creators label the content as containing sexual themes. There is a thriving artist community on Twitch, and this policy was overly punitive and did not reflect the impact of the content, the company said in a blog post Wednesday. To be clear, Twitch still does not permit streamers to be fully or partially nude, but it is now allowing content that deliberately highlights breasts, buttocks, or pelvic region with a sexual themes label. In addition, dances such as twerking, grinding, and pole dancing are now allowed without a label. The small wins. Meanwhile, there's no change to Twitch's policy concerning games featuring nudity, pornography, sex, or sexual violence as a core focus or feature. Those remain entirely prohibited. For games in which nudity is not the core focus or feature, the mature rated games content classification label is sufficient for incidental nudity. Angela Hession, Twitch's Chief Customer Trust Officer, explained in a blog post that the live streaming platform was making the updates after receiving consistent feedback from streamers that our current policies around sexual content are confusing and that it can be difficult to know how their content will be interpreted based on these policies. No, you didn't. You're doing this because OnlyFans is eating into your profit margin. That's it.
Yeah, we have to make sure that Amaranth can continue to put her names of the donations all over her body.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to my knowledge, she's actually switched over from Twitch to one of those porn sites.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Okay.
Good for her.
So I think you're 100% on the nose was that Amaranth was the problem. And they went, well, we don't want to lose any more of these artistic nude people.
Right.
It's art.
It's art. It's art.
This is a huge problem because there are kids who watch Twitch.
Yeah, but if you put a mature label on it, then, all better.
Absolutely. Though that stops it. That immediately stops it. Yeah, because that's the answer right there.
That stopped you when you were 10, didn't it?
Wait a minute. It says for adults only. I shouldn't be. Yeah, I'm going to read this. I'm going to look at this.
Oh, no. It makes me input my birth date before I enter the website. Okay.
As long as it says I'm 21, it doesn't matter. I can still gain access to the content.
Right. And any kid who can count on their fingers and toes can probably figure out what birthday to put in to make them 21.
Well, it's easy for them. All they got to do is put in one that starts with 19.
Oh, that's why you got to do that? Why you got to do that? And also, side note, where does one get a job as a chief customer trust officer?
I hate these.
Is that not the
titles,
most
man.
bullshit title you've ever heard in your
Yes.
entire life?
I bet she gets paid real well, though.
Probably because it's for a big corporation like Twitch. But I feel like if I went to the family holiday get together, they're like, well, what are you doing right now? Like, well, thanks, Aunt Bev. I'm the chief customer trust officer. And she'd be like, okay.
Good for you.
Oh, that's nice, dear.
Or if you lived in the South, it would be, oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
Bless your heart. I need help with the sentence. It's making my brain hurt. So artistic depictions, meaning they are drawn, animated, or sculpted.
There's so much money in the hentai community, they had to find a way to keep those people on Twitch.
How can I make artistic depictions of my breasts? Like how can I make this artistic?
Draw a smiley face on yourself.
On my boobs? on my movies?
Yeah, the little eyes and the nips, right? Ooh, right?
What I can do, since I can make my pecs bounce, I can draw little characters. And like maybe like a little platform, and make it look like it's a platformer game with Mark bouncing. He's hitting the block, bouncing.
I think you should just put googly eyes and head and shake. That's artistic, right?
Yeah, googly eyes on my nips, and then googly eyes over my actual eyes, almost like a Pan's Labyrinth type thing. That would be great.
I do find as well that twerking, grinding, and pole dancing are now allowed without a label.
It's art. Twerking
Right.
is art.
I wonder if they're doing this in preparation for Grand Theft Auto 6.
I just know that I'm going to have to delete my search history from Twitch. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, this is fine. You know, in theory, you should be able to put mature labels or the content labels on whatever. And I suppose it's kind of nice that Twitch is getting the stick out of their butt on a few things, but let's at least call this what it is. This is a move that is motivated purely by money.
It is.
Twitch
Yes,
wants
100%.
the donations and those type of streamers and the kind of money that they bring in to stay on their platform. So, you know, does it eventually become a case where Twitch is no longer a place where kids can safely go? Perhaps, but at least they're making money.
And it's going to also lead to the downfall of in-person strip clubs, in which all you're going to do now is go to Twitch. So your Barrel, the Dolls, the Classy Cat, Mr. Gentleman's Club, whatever it is, they're going to be going out of business because you're going to be sending bits their way rather than dollar bills.
But where are you going to get your cold potato skins and overpriced drinks?
They're not going to get rid of those because, contrary to popular belief, there is sex in the champagne room. Okay.
You know this from experience?
I've done a little bit of research. I'm not.
He did his own research. Donnie did his own research.
I have quite a bit of experience. I mean, I've never done it, but I've studied it. I've seen people do it. That's a lot of videos.
Is that a Casper reference?
pretty positive. I could do this.
Yeah. Piece of crumb cake.
All right, next up from Eurogamer, Valve asks Steam Deck owners to not smell vent fumes. Valve has asked Steam Deck owners to stop sniffing the fumes which come out of the handheld's vents. Smelling the fumes has become something of a meme on the Steam Deck subreddit for apparently smelling quite nice. If you search smell over there, you'll find a whole range of posts from people discovering the vents smell bloody delightful, asking how to return their Steam Deck once the fan stops smelling, and pleas for Valve to release a Steam Deck cologne or scented candle. If Valve wasn't aware of this habit before, it definitely is now, thanks to Metapod100 on Reddit, who shared a screenshot of a reply they received from Steam support. Their support ticket asks, is it safe to inhale the exhaust fumes from the top of the Steam Deck vent? It's somewhat of a meme to enjoy the fumes, but I think I kind of like it. The response from Sandler at Steam support revealed there are no safety concerns with general usage of Steam Deck, but directly inhaling the device's vent fumes should be avoided. Sandler cited general recommendations given for all electronics that you shouldn't inhale exhaust fumes from devices. We understand that it may be a meme, Sandler consoled Metapod 100, but please refrain from this behavior for the safety of your health. So while it's probably not dangerous in small amounts, it's best not to stick your face right in there to really savor the aroma. Best sniffed in moderation. Word on the street is the OLED model doesn't smell as good as the original. According to N Names on Reddit, it's sweeter, cheaper, and does not have me coming back for more. I share this information for science, of course, and not for those of you who may want to use that information to help inform a decision on which model to buy.
Man, this sounds so much like a fetish Reddit. Like, take out the fact that it's a steam vent and replace it with any body part, and boom, that is a fetish Reddit right there.
Right.
It's like people who are wine and beer enthusiasts, when they like smell the drink, they're like, I'm getting subtle hints of chocolate. Oh, you know what? Take it back more. Is that boysenberry? I'm thinking about boysenberry. How's the bouquet on your Steam Deck?
Oh, I need to return it. The bouquet has lessened. It's opened up too much. There's nothing left.
There you go. It's opened up too much.
Valve should capitalize on this. If people are saying like, hey, we want a candle, give the people a candle. Give the people what they want.
And this isn't new. Didn't they come out with a controller for the Xbox that smelled like pizza for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game that came out a while back?
I mean, it is new because you were meant to smell this. The Steam Deck is just running, and apparently people are huffing off of it. Like, this is the most 21st century thing I think I've ever heard.
Right. It just reminds me of that South Park episode where they're huffing cat piss, and it's called cheesing because it's fun to do. Because apparently it gets you super high. But, maybe that's it too, is that the people don't realize that it's giving them a sense of euphoria as well. And that's why they're just hallucinating that it smells like good stuff.
This also kind of has the same vibe to it as like, don't lick your Switch cartridges.
Right. Yes. So naturally, everybody's going to do it.
Right. Of course.
If you weren't inhaling or huffing your Steam Deck, you will be now.
If I had one, I would totally what's so great about this?
That's how you get hooked. It just takes one.
The first one's free.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing my Steam Deck.
Well played. Well played. And the fact that Steam said not to do it as well just adds the icing on the cake for it as being something even more funnier than it already was.
Oh, yeah. Well, they can't condone it because in 20 years, somebody's going to get cancer and blame huffing their Steam Deck and then sue Valve. So,
class action lawsuit from Valve.
Yeah.
Hey, I should go out and buy a Steam Deck just in case. I wonder if this is going to increase the sales of the Steam Deck, because everybody just wants to experience that. It's like the new car smell, that new Steam Deck smell.
Well, I do have a lot of questions. Like, if you were going to release a Steam Deck scented candle, what the heck does it smell like that's so great?
It smells like that. Whatever's inside the Steam Deck.
Whatever flavor Bloody Delightful is.
Bloody Delightful.
What does the Steam Deck smell like?
Smells like beef and cheese.
Fellow Steam Deck patrons eagerly agreed, comparing the smell to walking into an old school Blockbuster and ripe plastic.
So it smells like sweaty feet? That's the Blockbuster one.
Oh, God. You're not wrong.
Right.
Like stale popcorn and sweaty feet and then hot plastic.
Yes, that's what Blockbuster was. Stale popcorn.
But not the same kind of stale popcorn like from a Target.
No. Oh.
Or from the movie theater.
Or Kmart.
Those are all different kinds of stale popcorn.
You are taking me down memory lane right now.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about, too. All right, let's move on to our top 3 new releases.
All right, first up is Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising for the PS5, PS4, and PC. Rise to the challenge in Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. Rise to glory in the definitive fighting game experience for beginners and veterans alike. This powered-up revamped sequel to GBVS is more enjoyable and accessible than ever before. With simplified input options, even newcomers can engage in thrilling strategic matches. Next up is Palia for the Nintendo Switch. Explore a vibrant new world made just for you. Palia, a free-to-play game, cozy sim MMO game. Craft, cook, fish, and farm with friends as you live the life of your dreams and discover an enchanting adventure filled with colorful characters and mysteries to unravel. Play solo or jump in with friends at any time. Discover a shared world full of players and new friends and enjoy your adventure together. And lastly, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the hidden treasure of Area Zero, the Indigo Disc. Man, that's a mouthful.
That's what she said.
For the Nintendo Switch, continue your Pokemon Violet adventure and go beyond the Paldea region with the hidden treasure of Area Zero DLC. Join a special school trip to the land of Kitakami and learn about the local legend of the Loyal 3 Pokemon. Study abroad at Blueberry Academy, where the curriculum emphasizes Pokemon battling. Here you'll explore the Undersea Terrarium, a facility with artificial environments teeming with Pokemon. Each of the 4 areas of the terrarium has a distinct climate, ecosystem, and Pokemon to find. Let's take a look at our 3 here. Donnie, what are you in for this week?
I'm going to go ahead and say it's a big, fat 0 for me.
Ooh.
Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. I don't know what's going to get me into a new fighting game, but it's definitely not this. If it were some other IP like Turtles or G.I. Joe or something like that, sure, I'd check it out. But this does not excite me in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to skip Grand Blue Fantasy, which moves us to Palia. And immediately you lost me at Craft, Cook, Fish, and Farm with Friends. I don't want to do any of that in a video game. So that immediately is out. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I'm not a big Pokemon person, so I might check one out eventually or every once in a while, but I'm not going to start with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So none for me this week. I'm going to stick with playing Warzone.
He's back to Warzone.
He is back to Warzone. That didn't take long.
I only played Warzone a little bit today and yesterday.
Yeah.
I haven't played in a while, and I've been playing Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which I just finished. I just completed that game.
You sound like a dry drunk.
I was going to say something similar.
I could quit whatever I want.
All right, Blue, what about you?
Well, yeah, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the hidden treasure of Area Zero, of course, DLC to the main game, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
You almost said Pokemon.
I almost did, but I didn't. Not into this. Moving on to Palia. I mean, there's so many cozy sim games, it feels like now. They all kind of run together. Mm-hmm. I need more of a goal in my game than let's decorate our house. This is a renaissance for you if you're into these types of games, and I'm happy for you. So that leads me to Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. And while I'm not really a fighting game person, I do like a good anime game. I know you guys both hate anime, but I love it. And I am not going to complain too much about them dumbing down the inputs to where I don't have to think about it. Like, make it a button masher so that I can go after work when I'm like brain dead and just like mash the buttons a bit and then win.
I mash buttons.
There's a place for that, and I'm okay with it. So of these 3, I'm going Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising.
Nice.
What about you, Ryan?
I have not touched a Pokemon game in decades, so I will start now, especially buying a DLC for a game that I don't have. So that one's going to be off the list. I'll echo what you had to say about Palia. I think that this seems kind of similar to every other cozy sim game out there. It actually reminded me of those crappy sim game mobile type games that you see, that it's like, oh, fix the house, choose the right tool in order to fix the house, move over the furniture.
Well, it is free to play, so
right,
you're onto something there.
Indeed. So yeah, not really my flavor, which brings me to Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. if I had to pick a game, I'm not terribly excited about this one, but it is a fighting game, so at least there's something that I'm familiar with and that I enjoy. But the thing that really hooked me for this game had to do with the official trailer from Cygames. If you watch it online, not only does it include chibi characters, but it also includes a epic theme song that reminds me of South Park, where it was the protect my balls, let's fighting love. It is perfect. It is exactly like that, and I now have to play that game just because of that trailer.
Nice.
Hey, let's go, Kinkasuru. Taisetsu na mono, protect my balls. Boko ga warui, so let's fighting love. Let's fighting love.
All right, let's move on to our main topic for the night.
From IGN, why E3 died, a failure to evolve, huge costs, and too much competition. The Electronics Entertainment Expo was finally taken off life support earlier this week. Its epitaph being a brief statement reading, "After more than 2 decades of E3, each one bigger than the last, the time has come to say goodbye. Thanks for the memories. It was a long time coming." Games industry observers have wondered about the future of the show since PlayStation first pulled out of it in 2019. That same year, E3 accidentally leaked a document containing the address and phone numbers of show attendees, effectively doxing a large portion of the games industry. In retrospect, those events were the first in the series of dominoes that culminated in this week's cancellation, with the COVID-19 pandemic dealing the show a mortal blow. The Entertainment Software Association, the lobbying organization that ran the show, was described as out of touch with the evolution of the games industry. The E3 arms race to have the biggest and loudest booth led to increased budgets, which became harder and harder to justify. Tencent's North America head of communications Chris Kramer tells IGN, "One year at E3, I had the head of a company walk me out of our booth to point out another company's monitor, expressing his displeasure that the other publisher's screen was bigger and brighter than ours. The following year, the events team had to spend money renting a recently retired Jumbotron that came from an NFL stadium in order to make that exec happy. How do you track return on investment on a $5 to $20 million booth that only exists for 3 days and is seen by 20,000 to 30,000 people?" said Kramer. E3 had certainly experienced its share of ups and downs over the years. In its heyday, E3 was an exhausting but thrilling display of industry excess. A strong showing could buoy a publisher for months, while a weak showing had the potential to drown a game beneath an avalanche of memes and bad press. When Nintendo opted to pull out of E3 in 2013 and run its own direct streams, the narrative was that it was sinking toward irrelevance. As it so often is, though, Nintendo was ahead of the curve.
What industry observers at the time didn't realize was that the way we consume games was already changing. If there's a common through line in the conversations that I've had since the news broke that E3 is finally dead, it's that it remains stubbornly wedded to a format that felt increasingly outdated. Its big innovation was letting in fans in 2017, leading to overcrowding and security concerns. Sony's decision to pull out of the show in 2019 dented E3's prestige even further, leading other publishers to question whether the high cost of attending was worth it in the age of streaming. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck and physical events were canceled, the ESA was ill-prepared to adapt. A tepid digital showcase in 2021 was followed by an outright cancellation in 2022. During this time, IGN heard many rumors that the ESA simply lacked the expertise to put on a large-scale event like E3, with former ESA Senior Director of Communications Dan Hewitt said to be one of the event's main drivers. Hewitt departed for Gearbox in 2019, but confirmed to IGN in a message that he was E3's lead from 2007 to 2019. There was a significant change in leadership at the ESA around 2019. The people that came in seemed to not understand the significance of the show, despite how much revenue it generated for the organization, Kramer said. The ESA completely dropped the ball in 2020 and 2021, then bowed out with the astonishing disaster that was their team up with ReedPop for 23. While the ESA tried to present a game face after the flop of this year, it was clear that their mishandling of the E3 brand had effectively killed it. Speaking with people around the industry, one of the big complaints was E3's lack of identity. It wanted to be a trade show, a business hub, a show for fans, and a showcase for new games, leading to an increasingly tortured format mashing all of these elements together. ReedPop's solution was to create a separate E3 business days that would be restricted to members of the industry, with Gamer Days being held in a separate part of the convention center.
After E3 2023 was canceled, reports emerged that E3 2024 and 2025 had also been canceled, though the ESA claimed that no final decision had been made yet. ReedPop and the ESA parted ways in September, with Pierre Louis promising a complete reinvention of the event. The end finally arrived on December 12th when the ESA confirmed that E3, which had its run since 1995, was coming to an end. In an interview with the Washington Post, Pierre Louis acknowledged that times have changed. There were fans who were invited to attend in the later years, but it really was about marketing and business model for the industry and being able to provide the world with information about new products. Companies now have access to consumers and to business relations through a variety of means, including their own individual showcases. What is left are the ghosts of Reggie Fils-Aimé saying, "My body is ready," and Keanu Reeves shouting, "You're beautiful," as well as the abiding sense that events like the Game Awards and Summer Game Fest aren't quite enough to fill the void. Without E3, the summer schedule has felt increasingly unmoored. Every publisher has their own showcase now, turning the summer into a marathon slog of individual streams, events, and announcements that often wind up drowning one another out. June 2023 alone had more than 15 streaming events, some with dozens of games to cover. If there are any reasons to mourn E3, is that the noise has overwhelmed the game industry, leading to deserving games being lost in the process. The biggest loss to all of us is that the concentration and spectacle of E3 meant that the entire world paid attention to video games for a solid week every year, Kramer said. It's a shame that our industry will lose that directed attention, and I'll personally miss it.
So we have Kodak, Blockbuster, and E3.
Burn, burn, burn. Burn, burn, burn.
Companies that were massively successful failed to adapt with the times and then became dinosaurs.
I don't see how much adaptation or adapting that E3 could have done in the streaming era, because what you just read is a perfect example. Why are they going to continue to succumb to the requests of these execs who come in and want these high demands when the cost doesn't justify the return? Every single company now, all the big companies have their own streaming service. So they have the Summer Games Fest, they have the Game Awards, which kind of, I don't know if it really acts as an E3 sort of thing, because yes, you have awards, but you also get to see new games that are up and coming. Mm-hmm. But with everybody, with Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox really having their game shows or their game presentations and stuff, this is the writing on the wall. Yes, all these different companies coexisted back then because they had to. This was the only place that they could do it. The streaming capabilities were not there yet. But now, well, why am I going to go, if I'm an Xbox fanboy and I go to E3, I'm not going to pay attention to what Sony has. I'm not going to pay attention to what Nintendo has. I want to focus mainly on Xbox. This gives the people the ability to do just that. Focus on what they want from these specific companies.
And I would imagine a Nintendo Direct does not cost between $50 to $20 million for only 30,000 people to see it.
Though, if they took that nice man with the suit who does the snap and put a Jumbotron behind him, I mean, I think they should try it. You never know what'll happen.
A used Jumbotron, though. We have to
right.
Used.
A used NFL Jumbotron.
And Donnie, I think you nailed it with this one. It was relevant at one time. It was important at one time. But when the technology catches up and it allows these companies to have a direct feed to the people that they want to see, no one has to spend their money. No one has to travel. You are not paying for industry people to come in and paying for their hotels and all that stuff as well. It just becomes far too expensive when a cheaper option is, in fact, probably a better option for each one of these companies. I will say the one caveat to this is that what you don't get at E3 and that's not something I think was really discussed in this, was the networking among the game industry that you saw. So, for example, one of our good friends, Andy, producer, by the way, for Love Retro BTW, he attended E3 many times in the past. And that was what he said was one of the biggest things that he would miss from E3 is the opportunity to kind of rub elbows with the right people and meet new folks, gather those connections, and start making collaborations among industry professionals.
Right.
Now, though, one could say, well, you got LinkedIn and you've got other expos that you can go to if you want to rub elbows with folks. But E3 seemed to be, for at least a while, the one place you could go to and guarantee that you were going to walk away with something good for yourself as an industry professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that often gets lost in this narrative of, well, obviously E3 was dying because everybody saw it, everybody knew it.
Right.
But once upon a time, E3 was about much more than just game trailers for whatever's coming out, which are extremely easy, like throw on a showcase, throw on a Nintendo Direct, a Xbox showcase, a PlayStation State of Play. There's all your trailers, good to go. It used to be about so much more than that. It was about the networking. It was about the new technologies, and it was about distribution deals and all that kind of stuff. So that's not something that is easily replaced by a 15-minute YouTube presentation. But it really didn't have to go this way. And it's a shame because you think about the name recognition and the weight that E3 carried in the industry. Mm-hmm. If they had people in charge who understood the landscape, and it's so strange because if you're in charge of an event where the newest and latest technologies are being showcased, you think that you would kind of have your pulse on what was happening with new technologies in the world, right?
Conceivably, yeah.
Conceivably, you should, but it kind of seems like they were just resting on their laurels for far too long, didn't see that the world was changing. If they had been able to react right away, get ahead of the curve. Like, hey, giant corporations, we know you might not think that attending E3 is worth the cost, but hey, we'll run a showcase for you digitally. You don't have to worry about it. There's so many companies that, at least right at the beginning, I feel like would have jumped in on that. Like, okay, E3 will handle it for us. We don't have to hire people in our marketing team for that. We don't have to do the research, the focus groups, whatever. They'll just take care of it.
Yeah, I love this idea. I mean, just taking the brand and making it something completely new. It doesn't have to be the E3 actual expo.
Right. They could have gone a complete media company, like, let's have a YouTube channel, let's have a Twitch stream, let's connect with gamers all over the world every week and make sure that they have a reason to turn to E3 for their news and their knowledge and their industry insight. E3 let this success slip through their fingers, and they could have had it all.
They've let it slip, and guess who's there to pick up the slack?
Gamers Week?
Gamers Week podcast, baby.
Man, I did not catch that. Now I'm disappointed in myself.
We're disappointed in you too, but we'll let it go.
I'm used to it.
No, but I don't think that there's, aside from all of the individual presentations or streaming things that Nintendo puts on, Xbox puts on, Sony puts on, how does the average person get access to that? Or can they?
Well, yeah, you're kind of relegated to just whatever the perfect smiling face that the big corporations want to show you.
So at least with E3, you had a centralized location, which was Los Angeles. Yes, I know it was kind of annoying for East Coast people to get to that wanted to attend. But I mean, myself coming from Missouri and going to Portland I make that trip. I love that trip. I love meeting up in Portland to PRGE, seeing my friends, seeing all of the different vendors, all of the different shows, Classic Tetris World Championship, just the experience. And if I were able to experience E3 like that, I would definitely visit that every year. But now we can't do it anymore.
And I think one of the I guess maybe PAX is an example of a type of expo that travels quite a bit, and it's available in several different places. They got PAX East, PAX West, PAX
Southwest, I think. Yeah.
So that's maybe a small example of something that's filling the void, but I think you're right. There isn't a whole lot of opportunities for that social connection. But in the era in which we live in, do people want that? Is the question. I mean, we're dinosaurs, so we're old, so we actually talk to people when you go somewhere. Right? But do the kids want that? And especially with something like the potential for COVID-19 or whatever the next super pandemic is.
Can't live
does
in
that make
fear.
sense?
It makes sense. But the one thing you said earlier about LinkedIn being an option, I don't think it is. I don't think you get that same experience that you would being on the show floor, talking to somebody face to face, making that impression with them and getting your chance to speak with them that way, as opposed to reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn via Messenger. And you send them a message and they're like, who the hell is this guy or girl? Like, I don't know this person. Yeah, I'm not going to answer your question. No, thanks.
LinkedIn is only there so that you can stalk either the people you went to high school with or your former work colleagues and find out if they're more successful than you are.
100%. That Facebook.
Yeah, that's what Facebook is. It's just, it's not the work end of it. Is how screwed up is their life now?
Yep.
Is it more screwed up than mine?
But now that E3 is going away, do you guys have any favorite moments from E3s of the past? Like this mentions Reggie's "My Body Is Ready" and Keanu's. Isn't it "You're Breathtaking" though? Not "You're Beautiful."
Yeah, it was "You're Breathtaking."
Yeah, "You're Breathtaking." Okay, so fact checking this article.
You're breathtaking. You're all breathtaking.
And I think it's always fun to remember the whole PS3 thing of $5.99 and how well that went over.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say probably Reggie Fils-Aimé, just because it was so out of pocket. You didn't expect that to come from him. And then, of course, there's that added level of innuendo potentially to this as well.
Is do a what we call a body check on somebody. So today, I think we'll do it with Reggie. Hi.
My body is ready.
Hi. So it was perfect. It was the perfect moment for me. I love that.
Yeah, I think that may be the moment that endeared Reggie to gamers all over the world.
Absolutely.
Do you remember when Shigeru Miyamoto got on stage like a Zelda with a Master Sword and shield?
Yeah, with the sword and shield. That was funny.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it, but that's a defining moment for E3.
Yeah.
And the thing is, too, if you talk about 1995, though, and for several years, not having public access to that, you had to rely on video game magazines and some of the shows that were going on at the time to cover what was happening at E3. Yeah, I remember, when that would happen, you would spend months trying to find magazines that were talking about it, or you would catch a show because, back then, on demand wasn't a thing. You weren't going onto YouTube. So you had to plan out your day to make sure that you were ready for Attack of the Show to cover it.
Right.
That was super annoying, but at least the information got out there. So we were deprived.
One of my favorite moments was when Microsoft was presenting the Kinect. And it was just bombing so hard because the guy's like, hey, you ever seen the bottom of an Avatar shoe? And he moves a little bit and the little character raises his foot and the presenter's like, bam, there you go. Bottom of a shoe. And everybody in the audience is like, what the fuck is this?
Next, check out our full body motion capture. So as you can see, when I start making movements with my avatar, it instantly mimics me on screen. You ever wonder what the bottom of an Avatar shoe looks like? Well, bam! There it is.
Bam, buy our peripheral. You can look at shoes. Yeah.
The whole combination of people just trying to be cool and edgy and just failing miserably. I think there's a lot of moments like that are just mwah, chef's kiss.
The cringe is what keeps it coming back.
The cringe is delicious.
I think for me, one of the best moments, E3 1995. It was a very short presentation. All that happens is Sony guy walks to the podium, says $299, and then walks away.
I'm going to ask Sony Computer Entertainment President of America, Steve Reyes, to join me for a brief presentation. $299.
Everybody's clapping, everybody's screaming and yelling and yada, yada, yada. And it was a hit. That's what the cost of a new PS1 was.
Right.
Yeah, the launch of the PlayStation. That's right.
So do you think we'll ever see something like E3 again? Or is it now going to be segmented for the three different companies? And there's still a spot. There's still a placeholder right there waiting for Sega for them to come back with their new console or their new games. With Sega announcing the revamp or reboot of all of their old all of their old IPs, how can they not have their own like Sega streaming thing for whenever they display their games? How could you not?
I feel like I'm the blonde girl from Mean Girls, where I'm saying, stop trying to get Sega to happen. It's not going to happen.
It will, damn it.
No, I think in 20, 30 years, somebody will have the ownership of the E3 brand name, and they'll try to put together some sort of event, like a super retro feel to it. And I hope they succeed.
Honestly, I think in 20 to 30 years, there will not be three companies that are leading the video game space. I think there will be one or two, and we will just have to deal with the games that come out. That is my dystopian future.
I like my prediction better.
I'm just keeping it real. Keeping it 101.
Keeping it 100.
All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast. The show explores the history of video games through the stories and experiences of the everyday people who lived it. The podcast is currently on hiatus, but there are over 90 episodes in the backlog ready to be explored. This week, Bill recommends episode 30. It's an 8-bit Christmas with author Kevin Jakubowski. On this episode, Bill chats with the writer of the HBO Max film 8-bit Christmas about epic holiday gifts, NES memories, and making a movie during a pandemic. This week's question is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Let Bill know your answer by sending him a tweet at A Gamer Looks at 40 on Twitter.
I'm watching you, Jakubowski.
You forgot to turn in your paperwork.
So, Donnie, you do think that Die Hard is a Christmas movie?
100%. Absolutely. There is no other reason for Die Hard even to exist without Christmas. They're not having a 4th of July party in Nakatomi Plaza. They're not having an Easter party in Nakatomi Plaza. They're not having an Arbor Day tree pruning in Nakatomi Plaza. It's a Christmas party. It's a Christmas movie.
I'm going to agree with you. I think it is, in fact, a Christmas movie. And any movie that plays Run DMC Christmas songs is instantly Christmas movie. It doesn't have to be set in Christmas or during Christmas time, but if it does have that one Run DMC song, it is immediately a Christmas movie. So that is my criteria, and that's what I'm sticking with.
I love it.
Well, if it's not a Christmas movie, then you can't have the line, ho, 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 now I have a machine gun.
Exactly.
I mean, it could be talking about different types of hose. Garden hose, you sicko.
Of course. So without Christmas, you just don't have Die Hard. That's what I'm going to say.
It's Christmas time in Hollis, Queens. Mom's cooking chicken and collard greens. Rice and stuffing, macaroni and cheese, and Santa put gifts under Christmas trees. Thank you.
It sounded poetic.
Poetry snaps.
All right, thank you for coming, students. Please take your seats. Welcome back to Professor Rybread's Gaming History 101. And in today's lesson, we'll be discussing a console so ahead of its time, it promised touch-sensitive switches, light-emitting diode indicators, storage for controllers, and wireless controller technology in the early 1980s. Sadly, this console would never see store shelves, but it doesn't prevent me from wanting one. We, of course, are talking about the Atari 2700. So we're going to jump into this. Have you guys heard of the 2700 before?
The 2700?
Correct.
I don't think so.
What?
Oh my God. There was a concert you didn't hear.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm not surprised you didn't hear about it, of course, considering that it had never released. So this, the revelation that this thing existed has only really been recently, unless you, of course, worked at Atari at the time. So not surprising, right? But if you think about it, Atari was leading the way in home console markets in the early 1980s and late 1970s. But it was starting to see their market share shrink as competitor consoles like the Mattel's Intellivision and the Coleco's ColecoVision as they were being released. So these competitors' consoles offered more functionality, better processing power than the lowly 2600, and would even allow you in some instances to play your Atari 2600 games on their system. It also included a voice modulation attachment, so you could hear B-17 Bomber, which every kid wanted, I guess. So naturally, Atari hit back with a new innovation and an updated console that would assure the dominance of the market for years to come. And what they came up with was something that seemed out of this world and was known most popularly as the 2700, as many in consoles at the time would just increase a number of their consoles to show upgrades. You know, for example, the Magnafox Odyssey 1000, 2000, 3000, and so on. But for some reason, they pulled a Microsoft a few decades before it was cool and named their cartridge-based console the Odyssey 2. But I digress. The 2700 eternally was known as the RC Stella or Stella RC, depending on who you ask. But RC stood for remote controlled, and Stella was the code name or nickname for the 2600 internally at Atari. So sometime during 1980, Atari started development for the 2700. Oddly enough, they weren't looking to increase the capability of the system, but to make it more user-friendly and more aesthetically appealing. The internal guts of the 2700 were basically the same as the 2600, with a few key changes to the interface. First of those changes were touch-sensitive switches. Prior to this, all console systems had bulky switches that you'd click on or off, or were spring-loaded to reset the game, change the difficulty, switch between color and black and white, or select the game. The switches themselves were known to fail often, and consumers often wore them out by pressing them harder in futile attempts to get the games to work properly. Can anybody relate to that?
I can.
Yep. Stupid thing won't work. Oh, I snapped it off. Crap.
Oh, but better when you're playing a platformer. If you press the button harder, you can jump farther.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
That's a well-known fact. The touch-sensitive switches for the Atari 2700 were located on the top and included LED indicators. You didn't really need to push hard on the button to activate them, but rather merely place your finger on them, and they would let you know that the option was being chosen by a red LED light that would light up. Now, this included an option to switch between wired controllers, which plugged on the side, or wireless controllers that came with the system. Oddly enough, this was being developed even before the Atari released a 4-switch option for the 2600. Now, the shape of the console was drastically different as well. Rather than being a boxy wood panel covered system that was a relic of the 70s and 80s, the 2700 was a sleek wedge-shaped design that included a pod above the cartridge slot to store your wireless controllers. Rather than having the power switch on the top, it was located on the side of the system and was more akin to a light switch. Now, the design of the console must have been popular at Atari, as it inspired several future consoles from Atari, including the 5200, which also included a pod for your controllers, the Atari Junior, and the Atari 7800, which all had sleeker, wedge-shaped designs. Now, lastly, the most important aspect of the 2700 was the wireless controllers. Extremely innovative for a time, it included a few key features. First, the joystick on top, rather than being a long stick, was a bulky cone-shaped stick. It also included grips on the side for one key reason. It was not only an 8-way joystick, but it was also a twisting paddle controller all in one. On top of the controller were more touch-sensitive buttons with LED indicators for the game to reset and game select, making it so you didn't have to leave the couch to reset your game, which I, as a kid, found super annoying. On the left-hand side of the controller was your action button, similar to the large orange button you'd find on a standard Atari joystick. And rather than being a box, it was a long rectangle that fit comfortably in your hand. Just like the console design, this controller shaped the influence and look and functionality of the 5200 controller. On top included a long, spring-looking flexible antenna that was used to broadcast inputs from the controller to the system using radio waves. Now, all of the upgrades sound super cool, for a fairly rudimentary game system. So the question begs, why was it never released? Any guesses?
Atari had no money?
Oh, no. They had a butt ton of money at that time. They were actually in the black at that time.
They were all too high, maybe?
That might be the reason why. Like the root cause analysis was that they were too high, so they didn't make this thing right. But sadly, it was the key feature that was the selling point of the console that happened to be the problem. Now, the radio signal transmitted by the system was far too powerful. Its range would extend to 1,000 feet, meaning it had a few key problems with this. For one, if your neighbor had a 2700 and you were both playing at the same time, there would be no way for the system to discern between which controller was using the system. Imagine you're about to get the high score on ET and your neighbor hits the reset button on their controller.
What the hell?
Now, secondly, it used the same technology as garage door openers, which meant it could be picked up by such devices, making them dangerous for unsuspecting people. Oh my God, the garage door killed another person. Now, in order to get a radio transmitting product approved for the market, you have to get the FCC to provide your product with a license. Due to the power and technology behind it, Atari could not get that approval, dooming the system to obscurity. Now, currently, it's estimated that there may be 12 of the 2700 prototypes still in existence today, and it has become a holy grail for Atari collectors, fetching insane prices at auction, several thousands of dollars. And if anyone has one and would like to gift one to me, it is Christmas time after all, I would be happy to provide a safe home where it will be loved. It was worth a shot.
That's very generous of you.
Now, to wrap things up, the Atari 2700 was an innovative system for its time, and it influenced Atari systems for years to come. I personally find it to be a shame that it was never released and think it would have been a massive hit for players. Wireless controllers eventually did come out as a third-party controller for the 2600, but they were massively bulky and unreliable. Hashtag blame the FCC. Now, thank you all for attending this week's Gaming History 101. And just a reminder, if you have any ideas for a story or a topic that you'd like to hear, send us a message at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com, and we might feature your suggestion.
Blame the FCC. Blame the FCC.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap up the show. Thank you for listening to episode 101 of Gamers Week Podcast. And a big thank you to the Retro Game Club podcast, Love Retro BTW, and A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC, email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com, visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com, or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. And join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. Finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. And while you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice.
So one of the memes that inspired me to research this was there's that Bane meme that's like, oh, you merely adopted gaming. I was born into it. I didn't see a wireless controller until I was a man. And I always reply back to that to say Atari had wireless controllers.
Your Bane has an awful lot of flavor of Deckard Cain.
Because Bane does, right? Bane sounds a little bit like a Deckard Cain, right?
A little bit.
I hate you guys.
A tad.
But wireless controllers were a thing, damn it. It's not my fault that you didn't know it. And they were terrible, yes, I get that, but they existed. So the fact that you didn't see a wireless controller until you were an adult, that meant you were an adult in the Atari 2600 age. I don't want to hear it. End rant.
Do you feel better now?
I do.
I
feel
actually the entire internet all at once.
Yes. Woosah.
Woo-ha.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
If you really want me and you think I'm sexy, all you gotta do is vote.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD-STDs things, right? Make you fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
that was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.